I'm Caleb, 28, and my parents drove me to Chemo in silence the same week they surprised my brother with a brand new car wrapped in a red bow. I found out I had Hodgkin's lymphoma in late March. Stage 2A. Curable, they said. Treatable, they promised. But when you're sitting on the crinkly paper in a fluorescent exam room with a doctor telling you your white blood cells are basically doing backflips, treatable doesn't sound like a blessing. It sounds like war. That same week, my brother Micah got a silver Toyota RAV4 with leather seats and Bluetooth, and one of those backup cameras that makes you feel like you're in a sci-fi movie. I know because I helped take the bow off. I even took the picture for Instagram. Thanks Mom and Dad for the freedom wheels, Micah wrote, beaming beside the car like he just won a game show. I was wearing a knit cap because my hair was already starting to thin. Let me back up. I'm the middle kid. Micah is 24, 2 years younger. Our sister, Renee, is 33 and lives out in Phoenix with her wife and 2 rescue pit bulls. She sends funny memes and texts me pictures of her breakfast bowls. She also offered to fly in when she found out about the diagnosis. Mom told her not to. Said it wasn't necessary. Caleb's got us, she said. Got us. It started quiet. A lymph node in my neck, a little fatigue, a cough that wouldn't quit. But I'd always been tired. I was working 2 part-time jobs after finishing my master's in education. Interviewing for teaching roles, volunteering at the local library, tutoring middle schoolers who couldn't tell the difference between a simile and a metaphor. I was tired, sure, but I figured it was just life. Then came the scan, the blood work, the call. And the ride home from the hospital, where I told them the news. Micah played with the AUX cord in the back seat. Dad drove. Mom sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded like she was bracing for turbulence on a plane. No one said anything. Not, "We'll get through this." Not, "We love you." Not even, "Damn." Just silence. I thought maybe they were in shock. Processing. But the silence kept stretching. Through dinner. Through the weekend. Through the first consultation with the oncologist. Micah didn't come. He said he had plans. He was going to the beach with his girlfriend for the weekend. Good luck with the scans, he texted. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then the car showed up in our driveway. Brand new. Clean. Shiny. Red bow tied across the hood like a present from the universe. I watched Mom wipe a tear from her cheek and say, "He deserves this. He's worked so hard." Dad agreed. Said something about how proud he was that Micah had stuck with things. Micah graduated from a 2-year HVAC program. Got a job a month later. That was the bar. I had a teaching fellowship lined up for the fall if I survived the chemo. The next day, Mom woke me up early. "Your appointment's at 9, she said. I got dressed, pulled my hoodie tight over my patchy hair, and waited in the car. Dad didn't say a word during the 45-minute drive. Not even when we passed the lake where I used to swim every summer. Not even when we pulled into the cancer center. They dropped me off at the curb. "We'll be back around 1, Mom said, checking her phone. "I have to run some errands." And then they drove away. In the RAV4. The one with the heated seats. The one I wasn't even allowed to sit in yet. I walked into the clinic alone. Sat in the chair alone. Hooked up to the 4 alone. And I thought, not for the last time, what the hell did I do wrong? The first thing the nurse said was, "You doing okay, sweetheart?" And I almost started crying right there, because she was the first person that week who sounded like she meant it. Her name was Tasha. Wore bright purple scrubs with little stars on them, and had this no-nonsense warmth that made you feel like the world wasn't completely falling apart. She handed me a warmed blanket and explained what the infusion would feel like. Cold going in. Some people got nauseous. Some got sleepy. Some just stared out the window and tried not to fall apart. I became the third kind. Outside the clinic window was a strip mall with a tire center and a Thai place I used to love. They had this coconut curry soup that could fix anything except, apparently, cancer. I stared at it for an hour while the medicine dripped in and my veins turned to ice. When Mom and Dad picked me up, they didn't ask how it went. They didn't notice my hand shaking from the steroids, or the way my jaw was clenched so tight I thought I might crack a molar. They just turned up the radio. The next week, I made a joke about my hair falling out and how I looked like an off-brand Lex Luthor. Mom said, Don't be dramatic. Dad asked if I was keeping up with my job applications. I'm kind of focused on surviving right now, I said. He just nodded like I told him the weather was cloudy. Micah didn't even come home that week. He was on a road trip with his girlfriend. Posted pictures of them hiking in Asheville and doing shots in Nashville. The car looked great. He tagged it in every post. #RAVLife. The contrast was dizzying. I was living in the guest room. My old room had been turned into storage when I left for grad school. They never changed it back. The walls were bare, the bed was a futon, and there was a stack of boxes labeled "Garage Sale" in the corner. One night I tripped over a box of old Christmas decorations on the way to the bathroom and split my lip on the doorframe. Mom said I should have turned on a light. After my second round of chemo, I vomited so hard I thought I cracked a rib. I asked if Micah could maybe drive me next time. I don't want to bother him, Mom said. He's busy. Busy. Busy being loved. Busy being worth a car and celebrations and warm, visible pride. At night, I'd lie in that tiny bed and stare at the ceiling and wonder what it was like to be the child they worried about. The child they cherished. The one who got pep talks and hugs instead of calendar reminders and cold drives. At my third infusion, Tasha brought me a coloring book and a pack of crayons. For the waiting time, she said, smiling. It helps some people take their mind off the needle. She sat with me for 10 minutes and told me about her kid who wanted to be a chef. Then she squeezed my hand. Someone in your life should be proud of you, she said. So today, I'm proud of you. I think that's the first time I felt real warmth in weeks. I went home that day and cried in the shower until the hot water ran out. And the worst part was, I didn't even know who I was grieving. Myself? My family? The version of them I used to believe in? Maybe all of it. The turning point didn't come from something big. It came from something stupidly small, like all collapses do. It was my 4th chemo session, the official halfway mark, and I woke up that morning feeling like my bones were filled with wet cement. I shuffled to the kitchen, nauseous before I'd even eaten anything, and sat at the table. Mom was making pancakes. For Micah. He'd come home that morning for the first time in 2 weeks because apparently the new car needed a detail, and our dad knew a guy who gave family discounts. Micah walked into the kitchen, hair perfectly tousled, smiling like a golden retriever who never known adversity. He didn't even look at me. He just kissed Mom's cheek, stole a pancake with his bare hands, and said, "Morning." I cleared my throat, swallowing down the sour taste creeping up my throat. "I have chemo at 9, I said. "I need to be there a little early today. They're doing some additional tests." Mom didn't turn from the stove. "We know." "Okay, well, are we leaving soon?" Dad lowered his newspaper an inch. "We'll head out in a bit." Micah was scrolling on his phone. "Can I come?" "I need to pick up my car from the shop after." Mom hesitated. Dad didn't. "Sure," he said. "We'll drop you first." I blinked. Drop him first? My appointment's at 9. Dad folded the newspaper. The shop closes for lunch. It makes more sense to drop Micah first. Drop Micah first. To pick up his detailed, polished, practically glowing RAV4 while I sat in a clinic chair getting poison pushed into my veins. It was surreal. "Dad," I said slowly, because I honestly thought maybe he just didn't hear me right. "If I'm late, they reschedule. That pushes treatment weeks. You know that." Micah shrugged. "Dude, it won't take long." My stomach twisted so hard I had to grab the edge of the table. "I can't be late," I repeated. Mom finally turned. "Caleb, no one is saying you'll be late. Don't get worked up." Worked up. Like I was pitching a tantrum because someone ate the last slice of pizza. Dad looked at his watch. "Come on, let's go. We'll be fine." In the car, I sat in the back seat while Micah rode shotgun, tapping the dashboard like he was petting a loyal dog. The silence was suffocating. Dad turned up the radio. Pop music filled the space where concern should have been. Micah hummed. Mom scrolled her phone. I stared out the window at houses with trimmed lawns and parents walking their kids to school and lives where people gave a damn when someone they loved was sick. When we got closer to the shop, Micah said, "Mind dropping me right inside? I don't want to get my shoes dirty." Something inside me cracked. Not a small crack. A seismic one. I felt it. Like a wire pulled too tight, finally snapping. When they pulled into the shop parking lot, a good 25 minutes away from the clinic, I checked the time. 8:47, 20 minutes to get back. No traffic, maybe? One red light, I'd be late. Dad put the car in park. Micah hopped out, waving a receipt in the air. "See you guys later," he called. Dad started backing out. I leaned forward, heart hammering. "Can we please hurry? I really..." "Caleb," Mom cut in. "Your doctor won't mind a few minutes." "They will," I snapped, louder than I meant. "They will. This is chemo, not a dentist appointment." Dad exhaled sharply. "Enough. We're going." And then, this part stays burned in me forever, Mom turned around, looked right at me, and said, "You need to stop making everything about you." There it was. The quiet truth behind years of mismatched affection and unequal treatment. I didn't even have words. My throat closed. My vision blurred. My fingers went numb. They thought my cancer, my actual, literal cancer, was me being dramatic. I turned away and stared out the window, biting my lip so hard I tasted blood. We made it to the clinic at 9:06. 6 minutes late. They had to reshuffle the schedule. I sat in the waiting room, shaking with rage I didn't know what to do with. Tasha spotted me from across the room. She walked over, knelt beside my chair, and spoke softly. "Rough morning?" I didn't trust myself to talk. My voice would have broken into shards. She squeezed my shoulder. "You're here. That's what matters." But for the first time since my diagnosis, a thought slid quietly into my head. Maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I shouldn't be here with them. Maybe surviving didn't have to mean staying. And for the first time, I wondered what life would look like if I stopped waiting for my parents to love me the way they loved Micah, and started loving myself enough to walk away. Something changed in me after that late appointment. Not instantly, not dramatically, no thunderclap, no movie soundtrack swelling, but something small and sharp clicked into place. A realization, maybe. A refusal. A quiet, exhausted. No more. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. But it was there. When the infusion finished, I walked out to the parking lot and saw Dad's RAV4 idling at the curb. Mom was in the passenger seat, rummaging through her purse. Dad was tapping the steering wheel. They looked impatient. Inconvenienced. Like they were waiting for a takeout order, not a son whose body was actively fighting itself. I opened the door and got in. The silence felt heavier than any chemo bag hanging above me. "How'd it go?" Mom asked without looking at me. "Fine," I said. Which was a lie. I felt like a scarecrow stuffed with cement. But here's the thing, when someone consistently shows they don't want your truth, you stop offering it. On the ride home, Dad asked Micah if he wanted to go to the lake later. Micah said yeah, maybe they could grill. Mom suggested inviting his girlfriend. I sat there like a ghost, drifting between them, disappearing more each mile. When we pulled into the driveway, Mom finally turned to me. "Caleb, you look pale. You should eat something." It was almost funny in a cruel way. I shouldn't be pale? What exactly did she expect from chemotherapy? A healthy glow? "I'm going to take a nap," I said, because I didn't know how to say. Your concern feels like a reflex, not a feeling. I climbed the stairs to the guest room, my sad little futon, the boxes of old junk shoved against the wall, and collapsed. I slept for maybe an hour before I woke to my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was a text from my sister, Renee. "Heard about the car. Heard about chemo. Call me when you can." I stared at those 3 lines for a long time. She knew. Someone told her. And knowing her, it wasn't our parents. I called. She picked up on the first ring. "Caleb?" Her voice, steady, warm, familiar, hit something inside me so hard my throat closed. "I'm okay," I said automatically. "No, you're not," she said. "I can hear it." I let out a shaky laugh. "Wow. That obvious?" "You're my brother," she said. "I know your voice better than they do." And I damn near broke. I told her everything. Not the polished version. The real version. The silence in the car. The lateness. The pancakes for Micah. The "stop making everything about you." She didn't interrupt. Didn't try to sugarcoat. She just listened. Then she said the thing I didn't know I needed. Caleb, that's not care. That's neglect. And you deserve better. I covered my eyes with my hand. I know. I don't know what to do. You stay with me. She said immediate. Certain. You come to Arizona. I'll take you to treatments. Jules will cook. We'll make space. You don't have to do a damn thing except heal. The idea hit me like a warm wave and cold slap all at once. Leave? Leave home? Leave them? Could I do that? Should I? My entire life, I'd been trained to stay small to keep the peace. To not ask for too much. To not be inconvenient. To not make noise. But I was sick. And exhausted. And quietly drowning. Caleb, Renee said softer now. If you were your own student, what would you tell him? That's what did it. I imagined a kid in my tutoring group, thin, pale, hurting, telling me his parents ignored him through chemo, showed more pride over a car than his survival, told him he was making everything about himself. I would have told that kid to run. To safety. To love. To anything that didn't shrink him. I inhaled. Exhaled. Felt something steadier rise inside me than anything I'd felt in months. I said slowly, I think I want to come. Renee didn't cheer or gasp or lecture. She just said, okay. Then we'll make it happen. And that was the first moment, the very first moment in this whole nightmare, where I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. I hung up. Lay back on the futon. Stared at the ceiling. For the first time, the thought of leaving didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like survival. And somewhere deep down, faint but real, I felt something I hadn't felt since my diagnosis. Hope. I didn't tell my parents right away. Not because I doubted the decision, no, that part felt clearer than anything had in weeks, but because I knew exactly how they'd react. Not with concern. Not with love. Not with grief. With inconvenience. And I needed time to gather the pieces of myself before they tried to scatter them again. 2 days passed. 2 long, nauseating, bone-heavy days. In that time, I made small preparations in secret, packed the essentials, messaged Renee, arranged a consultation with an Arizona oncology team she recommended, and asked my part-time jobs for a leave of absence. I told them it was for treatment. Both bosses responded more kindly than my parents ever had. On the 3rd day, I woke up shaky and drenched in sweat, chemo's side effects, and wandered into the kitchen for water. Micah was there, eating the last of my favorite cereal straight from the box. He didn't even look at me when he said, Dude, Mom wants you to clean out the garage later. She said you've been home a lot, so you should pitch in. I stared at him. I couldn't tell if he truly didn't understand or if he did and simply didn't care. Micah, I said, voice hoarse. I just had chemo. I can't clean a garage. He shrugged. It's not that big. That was it. That was the whole contribution to the conversation. He sauntered away, eating flakes off his fingers. I stood there, trembling. Not from chemo this time. From anger. Real anger. Hot. Sharp. Alive. I'd spent my whole life stepping aside for him, his sports schedules, his moods, his needs, his endless orbit of attention, but this was the first time I felt something snap cleanly instead of tear. I wasn't the spare son. I wasn't the background character. And I sure as hell wasn't the housemaid with lymphoma. That afternoon, I found Mom in the living room, folding laundry while watching a true crime show at Volume 11. Mom, I said, I need to talk to you and Dad. She paused the TV, sighing like I'd interrupted a critical operation. What's going on? I'm moving to Arizona, I said. To stay with Renee. She's going to help with treatment. Mom blinked at me. Once. Twice. Like her brain was buffering. Arizona? She finally repeated, as if I had announced I was relocating to Mars. Yes. Why? You have a home here. It took everything in me not to laugh. A home? I said softly. Mom, I'm sleeping on a futon between boxes marked yard sale. You dropped me off late to chemo because of Micah's car detail. You don't talk to me. At all. Her face tightened. Caleb, that's not fair. Fair? I said, and my voice cracked, Embarrassingly, painfully. Nothing here has been fair for a long time. Dad walked in at that moment, holding a stack of mail. What's this about Arizona? I'm moving, I repeated, steadier this time. Renee offered to help. I'm going. He set the mail down slowly, like he needed both hands free to control his irritation. Caleb, be reasonable. Uprooting yourself during treatment is risky. So is being abandoned during treatment, I said. Dad's jaw tightened. We haven't abandoned you. You drive me to chemo in silence, I said. You treat Micah's car like it has cancer, not me. Mom gasped. How dare you say that? I dare because it's true. Dad took a breath. If you needed more support, you should have said something. I stared at him. Said something? Said something? As if I hadn't been screaming internally for months. Asking for support shouldn't be a full-time job, I said. And I shouldn't feel like a burden in my own house. Mom folded her arms tightly across her chest. And what about us? What about family? You're just leaving? There it was. Not, we'll miss you. Not, we're sorry. Not, how can we do better? Just, how dare you inconvenience us by needing things we never bothered to give? I shook my head. I'm leaving because I want to get better. I want to live. And I can't do that here. Dad opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. No more, I said quietly. No more guilt. No more minimizing. No more pretending everything is fine. Mom's lips trembled. We've always done our best. Maybe, I said. But your best doesn't work for me. And with that, something in the room shifted. A silence settled in, not the cold, punishing silence they used on me, but a silence I controlled. A silence where I wasn't scared anymore. A silence where I realized I didn't owe them my suffering just because we shared DNA. For the first time in my life, I felt tall. Steady. Certain. I walked upstairs. Shut the guest room door. Packed the last of my things. And for once, the weight I carried wasn't chemo or grief. It was freedom. A fragile, trembling, necessary freedom. I texted Renee. I'm ready. I left at dawn. Not dramatically. Not with slammed doors or shouted accusations. I left the way exhausted people do, quietly, methodically, like someone escaping a house after a fire has already eaten through the walls. The sky was a pale lavender, the kind of color that looks gentle enough to hurt. I carried my bags to the curb and waited for the Uber I'd scheduled the night before. The driver texted. Arriving. And I took one last look at the house. The porch light was off. The kitchen blinds were drawn. No one stood at the window. It struck me, painfully, cleanly, that no one was going to stop me. Not because they trusted me. Because they did not notice I was leaving. The front door swung open then, and for a moment my heart lurched. I thought maybe Mom or Dad had come to say something, anything. But no. It was Micah. Half asleep, rubbing his eyes, hair messed, wearing the hoodie I bought him for Christmas 2 years ago. He blinked at my bags. You going somewhere? He asked. My throat tightened. Yeah, I said. Arizona. With Renee. He squinted. For what? For treatment, Micah. Oh. He nodded slowly, like someone piecing together a riddle. Cool. Safe travels, I guess. That was it. No hug. No good luck. No hey, I'm sorry for being a human brick wall while you were falling apart. Just. Safe travels? Like I was taking a long weekend. Take care, I said, because I couldn't think of anything stronger that wouldn't taste like bitterness. He went back inside without closing the door behind him. The Uber pulled up, trunk popping open automatically. I loaded my things. When I slid into the back seat, I felt my body sag, like my bones finally understood they didn't have to hold up the whole house anymore. The driver was an older woman with silver braids and a sunflower air freshener clipped to the vent. She glanced at me in the rearview mirror and smiled kindly. Airport? She asked. Yeah, I whispered. Airport. She nodded. She didn't ask why I was alone. Didn't pry. Just drove. Halfway down the street, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Where are you? I stared at it for a long moment before typing. On my way to the airport. Going to Renee's. He didn't reply. Mom's text came next, seconds later. Why would you leave without saying goodbye? I closed my eyes. Goodbye is something you say when both people care. I didn't answer. The car rounded the corner, and the house disappeared behind the row of pines. And just like that, I wasn't theirs anymore. At the airport, I moved slowly, Chemo slow, through security and to the gate. I felt hollow and raw and strangely light. People rushed around me with luggage and lattes and weekend excitement. I sat down, pulled my hoodie tight, and closed my eyes. The truth was simple, brutal, and freeing. I didn't know what I was walking toward. But I knew exactly what I was walking away from. When the plane took off, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy yet, joy was too far, too foreign, but release. For the first time since the diagnosis, I wasn't scared of dying. I was finally scared of not living. Renee met me at the airport holding a cardboard sign that said, "Welcome to the desert, cancer butt kicker," which would have been embarrassing if it hadn't made me laugh so suddenly, and so hard I nearly doubled over. She hugged me tight, too tight, but I didn't care. Her wife, Jules, hugged me next, softer but no less fierce. "You're safe now," Renee said into my shoulder. I felt the words more than I heard them. Safe. I hadn't felt safe in months. Maybe longer. They drove me home, their home, warm and bright and cluttered with dog toys and mismatched throw blankets, and gave me the spare room. Not a futon. A real bed. Fresh sheets. A basket of snacks. An electric kettle. A note on the nightstand that said, "You matter here." I sat on the bed and let the words sink into me like medicine. Later that night, Jules cooked a huge pot of soup, and we sat around the table while the dogs bumped against my legs for attention. Renee asked about my treatment plan. Jules asked if I had any food aversions. They didn't talk about my parents. They didn't need to. At one point, Renee looked across the table at me and said softly, "You're not a burden, Caleb. You never were. Anyone who made you feel that way is wrong." I swallowed hard, nodding, because my voice had wandered off somewhere I couldn't reach yet. That night, I lay in my new bed, soft, warm mine, and for the first time in months, I fell asleep without bracing myself for disappointment. Tomorrow, I'd meet the new oncology team. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight? Tonight I rested. Tonight I breathed. Tonight, I started to believe that surviving might look like something more than just enduring. I didn't call them. Not that night. Not the next. My phone sat face down on the nightstand, buzzing occasionally with unknown numbers or silence disguised as "thinking of you" texts. I didn't touch it. I didn't owe them urgency. I didn't owe them grace they never gave me. Instead, I focused on healing. Renee created a routine for me that felt like being rebuilt from the inside out. Jules made breakfast every morning, piling the plate with eggs or toast or whatever my stomach might tolerate that day. She said calories were armor and fed me like I was going into battle, which, in a way, I was. I met with Dr. Selman again at the end of week 3. His office had windows. Not small prison windows like back home, real ones, floor to ceiling, with sunlight that didn't feel borrowed. He smiled when I walked in, looked at the charts, then looked at me. "You're responding," he said. "Your body's fighting back. Blood counts are stabilizing. We're not done, but you're doing better than I'd hoped." I stared at him. At first I thought I misheard. Then Renee clapped quietly from her chair in the corner and grinned like she'd known all along. And for the first time since this all started, I let the idea sink in. I might survive. Not just statistically. Not just physically. But actually. Fully. I might come out the other side of this and still be whole. We stopped at a smoothie bar on the way home. I got one with peanut butter and banana, something I hadn't craved in months. Jules met us at the door, dogs circling my legs like I'd been gone a year. There was a vase of wildflowers on the kitchen table with a sticky note from Renee. "This house believes in miracles. Also, your turn to pick the movie tonight." I smiled without trying. That night, we watched some ridiculous sci-fi comedy where aliens spoke fluent French and everyone wore goggles for no reason. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the couch. My body hurt in all the ways that reminded me I was still alive. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. Return address from home. I opened it in the backyard while the sun crept over the fence line. It was from my mother. Caleb, we miss you. The house is quiet without you. We don't understand why you had to leave the way you did. You could have just told us what you needed. We were doing our best. We still are. If you want to come home, your room is still yours. Love, Mom. My room. They meant the guest room with the broken futon and the boxes labeled yard sale. They meant the silence. The car rides. The casual neglect dressed in duty. They meant that I should return and shrink myself again for their comfort. I didn't respond. Some things deserve closure. Some things deserve distance. And some things deserve nothing at all. A week later, I walked with Renee through a quiet neighborhood near the mountains. I was still slow, chemo legs, she called it, but I didn't mind. Every step felt like a declaration. You look lighter, she said. I nodded. I feel like myself again. Or someone I'm starting to like, anyway. We stopped by a bench. The sky was turning pink and orange, and that weird purplish haze you only get in desert dusk. You know, she said, you didn't just survive leaving them. You thrived. I didn't think I could, I said. That's because you were taught to believe survival was selfish. I swallowed hard. And love was something you earn. But it's not, she said. It never should be. That night, I sat alone on the back porch. The dogs were curled up beside me. My body ached, my energy was low, but my heart was louder than ever. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled to the photo I took the day I left. My suitcase at the curb. The sunrise just peeking through. No one in the doorway. I saved it as my lock screen. Not as a grudge. As a promise. To never return to silence. To never apologize for surviving. To never again confuse tolerance with love. My healing didn't start with chemo. It started the moment I said, enough. And for the first time, I believed. Not hoped, not imagined, but truly believed. I was going to be okay.